Welcome into Last Call. Wow, we have some debriefing to do. What a week of sports we had, especially here in Indiana. Obviously, the Super Bowl last night. We'll hop into that, but we'll start on the campus of UIndy. We had 2 basketball games this past weekend. Thursday, a little bit better looking than Saturday. We'll start with Thursday against Upper Iowa. First with women's basketball. That one, a loss, a close one, 79-77. This was a game where the Greyhounds controlled completely through 3 quarters and probably half of the fourth, and at the end just fell through their fingertips, Jace.
And they had the ball last possession, a chance to win it, and they went quickly with it, and that gave Upper Iowa a chance, and they hit the game winner with about 1 second left. I mean, this Greyhound team, they beat Upper Iowa in Upper Iowa handedly, and then came home and just fell flat against the Peacocks this time out.
And remember that, beat them handily last time out. As we hop in to Saturday, we'll stick with women's basketball. A similar story. It was myself and Landon Kuntz that went to Truman State to watch the Greyhounds whoop up in that matchup. And they did. They would win by 15, 20 points, come back to Indianapolis. It looks like a completely different Truman State team and possibly a completely different UIndy team.
And Truman State, coming into that game, I think they had 2 conference wins all year long, and they came into UIndy, a team that had beat them by a lot just about a month ago. And the Greyhounds, they had no Chikamba, who's the main person that gets the rebounds for the team. Alana Wells had a great day, but they just really couldn't keep up with Truman State. It was a close game, I think, all game long, but they just really couldn't get that edge over the Bulldogs in the game.
And when we asked Coach Mitchell about that loss of Chikamba in this game, it's tough because not only is it 8 points, 8 rebounds that you're losing, but she also does the intangibles. And she does the little things that don't show up in the stat sheet. You're looking at one of the best cutters on the squad, one of the best passers possibly, one of the best minds, basketball minds that is, on the floor. So Chikamba being out possibly had its fingerprints on this game for sure. But looking into the rest of the women's season, what are you seeing in the GLVC?
It's tough now. I mean, they had won those 2 away games at Maryville and S&T. That got them up to 6th in the conference, top 8 and make the GLVC tournament. But having lost these 2 games at home, they've now fallen behind in their 9th in the GLVC, right behind Quincy, who they play on Thursday. That game might be the decider to whether they make the GLVC tournament or not.
May need to flip some tables for that women's team. But as we move to the men's team coached by Paul Corsaro, on Thursday, they had one of the most important games that they would have all season long against number 2 in the conference at the time in Upper Iowa. And this was to cement yourself at number 1, a great win at a great time.
And it was a great crowd behind the team, too. Probably the best crowd I've ever seen there at Nickerson. It was phenomenal. The football team showed out in full form, a student section they created, and that was a huge win against Upper Iowa. And Upper Iowa, they have a squad. They're going to possibly be a NCAA tournament team this year, and this was a great win to get at home, but then they go to Saturday off the high of this win and just fall flat.
A huge, huge factor in this one, Jay Kilmer, the leading scorer in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. He was held to just 6 on the day. He averages 24, as I said, best in the conference. He held to just a 4th in that as we get a look at the UIndy men's weekends. So Thursday, a great game for them. Saturday, not so much, and you're going to see why here. Truman State letting it rain from long range the entire first half. They only hit 1 or 2 in the second, but the damage is already done, and just a tough hill to climb up coming out of the first half.
And UIndy, they pride themselves on their defensive basketball. This time they just weren't closing out on these shooters, and you can't allow open looks to a team that can shoot lights out like Truman State can when they're on their game. You allowed way too much space for them to shoot, and they took advantage of it, and the Greyhounds just couldn't crawl back in time. Obviously, the loss of Paul's Linces hurts this team in the long run.
And close to a career high for Kendrick Choa, 27-13 for him. He had an amazing game, and in what would be the fourth quarter, the final 10 minutes of the ball game, Kendrick Choa was at the line time and time and time again, and he was hitting big ones. I mean, he was hitting hitting big ones for the volume that he saw at the line. This is a free throw shooter that's shooting in the mid-50s, so to see him shoot well into those 60s and 70s.
These last 5-6 games at the line. He did this last year too, where over the course of the season he got better and better as the season progressed, and right now he's playing his best basketball he's played all season long. Unfortunately, he couldn't crawl his team back in the game, but I think he's where he wants to be at this point in the season, Kendrick Choa.
And then the similar way that the women's team was missing Patty Chikamba, the men's squad was missing Paul Zielinskis, who's averaging over 12 a game and also one of the better distributors in the GLVC as well, an offensive weapon. So as the Hounds are still kind of unsure on a timetable for his return, how do you fill that gap in Zielinskis?
I mean, Zach Zoll is going to be one of your main guards now. We saw against Upper Iowa, he had a great game, his best game by far as a Hound, 22 points. And then really didn't do as much on Saturday against Truman State because they had to try to battle back. They had to keep those starters in a little bit longer, like Josiah Tynes. But Zoll, being the other transfer guard for the Greyhounds, is going to have to fill in those shoes as best as possible.
And looking in to this upcoming trip, you have Quincy on Thursday, which is huge for the women, right? Because Quincy is that one spot to get into the GLVC tournament. So the women take that. Chances are, considering the season doesn't fall apart in the last 2 weeks, that you're in the GLVC tournament. And for the men's side of things, on Saturday, you have UIS. And UIS, if I'm not wrong, sits currently third in the conference?
Third in the conference, yep. They're tied with Upper Iowa for second.
So that's a huge game to cement yourself atop the GLVC and also propel yourself in the regional rankings as well. Keep yourself in that national tournament mix. And
yeah, because I mean, UINDY right now, you think they're about 5-6 area in that Midwest regional ranking, just trying to, stay home, stay in that 5-6 slot. Don't fall apart late, and you'll be in the NCAA tournament this season.
It was awesome having Mayor of Indianapolis, Joe Hogsett, on the broadcast. I tried to catch him slipping a little bit. I asked him who his team was in college basketball. He said that he's a fan of every institute of higher education in the state. But why don't we get to two big ones in the form of Indiana University and Purdue University? Take a trip to Mackey in West Lafayette, and Hoosiers had a nice opening 5 minutes, but from there on, Purdue and that man right there, one of the best players in college basketball,
He's
Zach
the best player in college basketball.
He went to work, Jace. We see this guy, and a lot of the conversation comes, is he NBA ready, or will he be to come the draft?
I mean, he has the height to do so. If he can just, put a little more muscle on him, he has that muscle too. It'll be interesting to see how he matches up against those NBA centers like Jokic, like Embiid. I'm not sure how that'll work yet. But Zach Edey, I mean, he's one of the best players I think we've seen in college in a long time, in all honesty.
You think of bigs like Luka Garza and Drew Timme that have absolutely torn up March in college and then are almost, irrelevant come their NBA careers, which is no knock to them. It's just a change of game, a change of pace when we step up to the pro level. As for me and Zach Edey, I think this guy can 100% play at the level. You look at centers like Ivica Zubac on one of the best teams in the West. He doesn't need to go out there and be Joel Embiid. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't need to be Jokic.
I mean, because he has that team surrounding him with, Harden and Russ and PG and all that.
And I think you can see a lot of similarities in, like, I made the Zubac comparison. You have scorers all around him, just like you do on the Clippers. And I think that's a system that works. I think that's a system for Purdue. And as we look later into the season, IU probably not a tournament team as of right now.
It doesn't seem like they will be. The only way that I could even see them getting in is if they only lose one of their last games here on the rest of the season. They have the Wildcats on Saturday. That'll be a big one because they're one of the top teams this year in the Big Ten. If they win that one, they might have a long shot at making it, but right now they might be NIT bound.
For Purdue, Zach Edey had 26 and 13. And I said before we get on here, if Purdue's going to do something in March, come March, this is the team that's going to do it, or else for Purdue fans, it might be another 5-10 years before you're even in the same breath.
Because, last year the guard play was what killed them, especially in that game against Fairleigh Dickinson. But now Braden Smith has shown as one of the best guards in all of college basketball.
Smith. And you have more weapons on that team, and Mason Gillis, who had 9 points. Fletcher Lawyer didn't have a great game. I think that's something to note too. Fletcher Lawyer didn't have a great game, and there were some Purdue guys that really didn't play to the standard.
It didn't matter, though, because this is one of the worst IU teams that I think we've seen in a while, ever since those Archie Miller days. Woodson, I think he has one more year at Indiana until he gets the boot if the team isn't successful next year, because that'll be at least 3-4 full recruiting rounds for the team. But, I mean, we knew this year that IU was going to be iffy. They brought a bunch of transfers in. We didn't know how they'd gel together. And Khalil Ware just really isn't the center we thought that he might be coming in to IU. And we were warned by Oregon fans that he wasn't going to be like that, but he isn't what we thought he would be.
11-8 for Ware on the night, and Purdue takes it 79-59 at home against the Hoosiers. That's a great game, but another game last night in the Super Bowl that we're going to break down, give our thoughts on that up next on Last Call.
Emma Donnan, elementary and middle school. Discover the Donnan difference. A school where you can celebrate others. Come together as a community. Be a part of a learning environment where students and teachers are appreciated. Emma Donnan, a culture that can't be beat, that's going onward together. A school filled with love. Emma Donnan.
I love my school.
Super Bowl Sunday yesterday, and a slow first half, some might say, defensive battle as we were hyping up both defenses last year. That's what we got in the first half. Offenses, though, come out in the second and make for exciting. Much as you'd like, but how about Juwan Jennings and a breakout game for him?
Absolutely. I mean, we knew he's like that third or fourth best threat on that offense behind, Kittle, Debo, and CMC and Ayuk. But Juwan Jennings, he had a touchdown pass and a receiving touchdown. Just absolutely. I mean, I love Super Bowl and I love trick plays, and combining the two, we see so many of those at Super Bowl, and that's just so much fun to see a play like that, work.
But how about this right here? Travis Kelce ripping in to head coach Andy Reid. This is just a couple drives into the game, and yet again, you have an injury right here for the 49ers, something that they battled.
That's huge, because Greenlaw, I mean, is trying to run on the field. I think his Achilles just poof.
There's so much that was going on off the field, not even to mention Taylor Swift and the Sweets, that you had to, for these coaches to really lock in on the gridiron was a task in its own self.
You look at Shanahan, you got to think, this is the third time he's been in the Super Bowl. Once
win in this one, but the question arising over in that 49ers squad, you mentioned Shanahan. Did Brock Purdy do enough in this game?
I think so. I mean, he did what he had to do with his legs, making plays, because he was consistently getting rushed as well, more than I think a lot of people saw. He was running, he was rolling out of the pocket. He was making those throws that would need to be made in the game. But in the end, it's Mahomes, and Mahomes is going to do Mahomes things and win the Super Bowl.
Mahomes, I'm glad you bring him up. Brady level. I mean, Tom Brady was a name thrown around a lot last night as we see Pat Mahomes lead, another great drive to end it, win a Super Bowl in overtime for his third. This guy's on his way to Brady. Is he there yet?
No,
and if
he's not there yet.
Where does he need to go?
He's top 4, top 3 right now, I think, all time already at 28 years old. I mean, you have 3 Super Bowls, 3 MVPs, 3 Super Bowl MVPs.
he could go out and win, let's say he gets more than Brady. Let's say he goes to win 8. I think Brady fans could always make the case when they played in the Super Bowl, and Tom was old. This was Geezer Tom just a couple of years ago in his 42nd season or whatever in the NFL. And he ended up beating Patrick Mahomes in that game. So I feel like no matter what Pat Mahomes does, he even said it himself after the game in comparison to Brady, it's always going to be tough because when they went head-to-head, Brady won.
I mean, that was by far Mahomes' worst Super Bowl. I mean, there was one he lost, obviously. His O-line did not hold up the entire game in that one. I think they had, 9 points the entirety of the game? But you look at the defenses, I mean, you could make an argument that Tom Brady was carried by the defense that year with Tampa Bay, and that Mahomes was carried by his defense this year. Because Kansas City had a top 3 defense in the NFL this season.
Some second group guys, if you will, or maybe some B-tier superstars, or not superstars, but B-tier players on the Kansas City Chiefs stepping up. Marcus Valdes-Scantling, a couple spotty catches. Obviously, in the run game, you had Pacheco doing a great job. Obviously, a fumble here and there.
In the red zone, too. That was
for the Chiefs,
almost a killer.
A lot of it is smaller guys coming up and making the most of their role. A lot of that on special teams as well. Without special teams, the Chiefs don't win this game.
No.
Because an extra point from the 49ers seals that they win by 1 in the fourth quarter, and bye-bye to the Super Bowl for the Chiefs. Special teams, it's something that goes overlooked 17 games in the regular
Even the
season.
punting game, because the field position battle is so important. You want to keep your opponent as far away from the end zone as possible. And Townsend, being the punter he had a few long boots of 60 yards that really pinned San Francisco back deep, and they weren't able to have a complete drive to the end zone.
For Brock Purdy, obviously last year, he was battling that elbow, that shoulder injury on his throwing arm. You tried to play through it, but you couldn't. You get your first real chance against Patrick Mahomes this year. Doesn't make the most of it. Is he coming back?
I believe so. I believe give him a year or two, and San Fran will be right back in this position. Purdy is a top 10 quarterback in this league. People don't believe that. Talent.
Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings, CMC. How about 8 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown, 80 yards on the ground as well. Had the 49ers won the Super Bowl, he would have been in the talk for Super Bowl
Him or
MVP.
Juwan Jennings would have been probably the two debated between each other.
I think Juwan Jennings was the guy that really came out when the 49ers needed, but they fall flat. Where do you think the fault lies for San Francisco?
I mean, you could argue that coin toss even, because with the new overtime rules, I think you almost want ball second, because you want to know what you want to do after the other offense goes on the field. If I was San Fran, I would not want to put the ball in the hands of Mahomes for that last drive of the overtime and give him a chance to win the game. But the fault doesn't just lie there. It lies also on, like you said, the special teams. It was a low kick by Moody that got blocked. May have been his worst kick of the day. But, I mean, San Fran, they played a good game, but once again, they just can't hold on to their leads. It's been a problem.
Chances are you're going to punt as well. So the math in favor of deferring that time, but it's a tough situation. It's so tough. And you see a couple players coming out. 49ers were really unsure on the OT rules, where the Chiefs, they would have weekly meetings throughout the postseason to clarify.
And that was the first ever overtime game with those rules. It got put in 2 years ago. But finally, we saw it in the Super Bowl. Of course, of all games, we saw an overtime game in the Super Bowl, the second one ever in Super Bowl history. Obviously, the first being Shanahan as the OC of the Falcons when they lost to the Patriots.
So now, as we look into next season, let's talk some early Super Bowl predictions. We had a fun playoffs. The Lions came out, did some great stuff. Obviously, 49ers and Chiefs, probably two best teams in the NFL this season, come in and square it off. They duke it out. They go into OT. Chiefs win it. But looking into next year, who are you liking?
I'm going to say the Chiefs are going to get back there again. I mean, they just have the squad. And I think they're going to get T. Higgins from Cincinnati because he's going to be a free agent, and rumors he might go there. If you give Mahomes a receiver 1, it's over. They're going to go back. They're going to go and win again. But from the NFC, I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. They had a great season this year, an underdog season. They started off really rough, got that 7th seed, won that game against Dallas, almost went into San Fran and won. If they keep that same squad, maybe get a receiver, a linebacker here or there, Jordan Love, he is that guy, and I think he could lead them to a Super Bowl next year.
Hey, Jace, me and you, I might be rubbing off on you a little bit. I like Jordan Love a lot, and I think that he gets miles better this offseason.
100%.
I think he gets miles better through next season. I think if Aaron Jones stays, you have a wide receiver core that's young, that you can develop, that you can get through the postseason. I mean, they had the 49ers beat.
Oh, they had them beat. They lost it themselves.
They had the 49ers beat. The Chiefs, they're definitely a threat to get back there. I'm trying to think who else in the AFC. A healthy Bengals team could definitely do some damage. The guy that's had Pat Mahomes' number has been Joe Burrow to this point. So, taking your guess. But I like the Packers winning it all.
Winning it all?
Winning it all next year. Take the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. Does not matter. Green Bay gets it done. Green and gold will hold up the trophy.
I'm going to say the red and gold Chiefs repeat next year.
Now a three-peat. Now that might put him up there with Brady. There'd be a lot of talk about that, but that's for next year on Last Call after that happens. But the Pacers and a look around the NBA on the way as we hop into basketball season, inch closer to the All-Star game and their postseason as well next on Last Call.
So the overall mission here at Flanner House Indy is to help with the development and growth, the self-efficiency and self-sufficiency of the near northwest side of Indianapolis. When the Double Eights closed in the area, that left the near northwest side a food desert. So Brandon Cosby, the executive director of Flanner House, started with the Flanner House Farms, where they grow fresh produce organically for the neighborhood around. And then later on down the line, Cleo's came about. So we're here to help with the sustainability of getting fresh food at cheap prices to the locals around. Black owned, black ran. That's the gist of Cleo's for the most part.
Super Bowl talk has concluded as we move into basketball season. Thanks for joining us, Caden, Colford, Jace, Hodge on Last Call. The Pacers going to New York, to the Garden to take on the Knicks, where they would win 125-111 in a great game for them. We're seeing great stats from Tyrese Halliburton, an easy double-double as we're seeing night in, night out in 30 minutes, 22 and 12. Turner with 23, 8, and 4. Siakam 19. TJ McConnell with 16 off the bench. Begging the question, is this the best game we've seen the Pacers play since acquiring Pascal Siakam?
I really do believe so, because now you're seeing Halliburton playing almost full minutes now in these games. And him and Siakam are starting to have the understanding of each other. You saw the highlight play by Halliburton, bounced it off the glass to himself over to Siakam in the corner. That was the play of the game. That got the Pacers rolling in that one. And, the Knicks, they didn't have OG Anunoby or Julius Randle, so they're kind of low right now on players. They have to have other players step up like Precious Achiuwa, but he just didn't really do enough in these games. But Brunson's still obviously doing his thing, 39 points. And once again, he does that night in, night out.
I like the performance, but I can't go as far to say that this is their best performance. I feel like they can perform a lot better than
I'm
this.
saying so far. I think it's been the best they've shown as a healthy Pacer squad.
I still think there's a lot to figure out for the Pacers because Miles Turner thinks that he's Michael Porter Jr. playing the 5 on the Pacers when in reality, he's supposed to be the center on this squad. And he had a great game, but is it consistent? Can it be sustainable? And no, I don't think so.
Since acquiring Siakam, Turner's been a lot better about getting rebounds, finding those open gaps and whatnot. Turner and Siakam, they have an understanding of each other and how they play as well. They have almost forever. That's why Siakam wanted to play with Miles Turner. He listed him, I think, as his second player he wanted to play with behind Kevin Durant. That's kind of crazy in the grand scheme of things. But I think so far, Pacers, best win they've had, 100%. If they can continue this level of play, they're going to be a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference.
But Jalen Brunson on the other end. 39 points, 4 assists for him on the day. And this is where me and you might kind of go back and forth. Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson, those are the two premier guards in the East. If you need one, which one are you taking?
I'm going to sound like a homer here, but I'm going to go with Tyrese Halliburton. As a Pacer fan, obviously, I feel like I'm obligated to because I hate the Knicks in every way, shape, or form. But Halliburton, if you want like a true guard, point guard, Halliburton's that guy because he can pass and he can score. Brunson is almost purely a scorer.
I think he's a game winner. I think this guy's a game sealer. I think Jalen Brunson is a bucket. This guy.
Halliburton's a game winner too. You see him in the clutch every time. He always hits those big shots.
I don't know. Put Julius Randle back on the floor and actually play with these two teams at full strength, and I think the Knicks get it done pretty handily as they've done.
I really hope we see a playoff series between these two squads because this would end a lot of debates around the NBA and between me and you.
It would. It would prove me right. And
I'll prove you wrong.
I cannot wait for it. We look to the rest of that squad. I mean, without Randall and Robinson, Alec Burks is the go-to guy.
He just came over.
He dropped 22 on the Pacers.
There's always one random guy. The Pacers always allow one random dude to just go for 20 points.
That's the problem.
I know that's the problem. Defense is the problem for the Pacers. They played a lot better in this game, but obviously Nick's missing a lot of main scorers on the squad. But if the Pacers can get that defense figured out, obviously Siakam has led to a much improved defense so far. They aren't worse in the NBA. They're like 25th, 24th now. But even in the long run of things, that's a lot better than where they were defensively.
But for the Knicks, I'm thinking back to Melo days, maybe a little bit before that. This team's probably better than that.
You think so?
When you have everybody, Robinson, when he's healthy, we're waiting on a timeline for him. Randall when he's back, and Brunson. This is a team that's great on both sides of the ball. This is a team that's great on the glass. And every team needs a guy. Every great team needs a guy. That's what I said about Purdue last year. And that's why they couldn't get it done, because they didn't have a guy that you could put on an island to go get you a bucket when you need it. And for this Knicks team, that's Jalen Brunson. It always will be Jalen Brunson, and there's not a whole lot of guys in the league that are going to stop that man. But
I mean, there's a lot of hype surrounding the Knicks right now ever since that trade deadline. They got some good pieces with Bogdanovich and Alec Burks coming over from Detroit. Obviously, now they have a true shooter in Bogdanovich to fill that 3 slot for New York. But, I mean, they're 4th in the East. They're only a game behind Milwaukee. So this is definitely one of the best Knicks squads we've seen in a long time because they've been, 5th, 6th for a while.
And let's take a look at those standings in the East as you look at the Knicks right there in 4th. Boston atop the conference. Knicks, they're not a contender yet.
They're close. They can make a run the playoffs if they get the right matchups.
But Boston, Cleveland, I think they've
been
only
on a
lost
tear
one game
in the last 16 games.
They are out of their mind. Donovan Mitchell playing like the best shooting guard in the league right now. I don't know if we have time for that on last call, but why don't we take a look at the West now as the Clippers have moved up to 2. They're right there with Minnesota in the West. So as we narrow down these teams, probably 5 or 6 that could realistically.
I mean, you look at the standings, you see the top 4 are all within a game of each other, half game of each other. That's insane. And you see Phoenix is still right there. They have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. They're still going to be a threat. I think those top 5 are your biggest threats to make it out of the Western Conference, though.
But all in all, who do you consider contenders? Real shots
in the West?
To hold up the trophy anywhere. East and West, who are the contenders?
I see 4 real squads: Boston, the Clippers, the Nuggets, and Milwaukee if they figure it out.
Okay. I want to throw a team in there in Oklahoma City.
Okay. I don't think so. I don't think yet. They have this squad, but they're still young and inexperienced. I think they'll get decently far, but not far enough to make it to the NBA Finals.
I mean, inexperience can be good and bad. I think to some point you have a team that's almost cocky in a good way, confident. But that's for later in the season.
Yeah.
Pacers basketball, more of that this year. Caden, Colford, and Jace Hodge. What a football season it was. We're excited for more of that next year. But basketball and baseball on the way, the rest of the way out for our last call.